Scotty, he kicked off from 1990 to 2000. Scotty was the #1 sales manager with Combined Insurance Australia. In 2000, he kicked off his journey with Renet. Started off with one real estate agent. When he sold the business in 2015, we've grown that to over 5,000 real estate agents in Australia and New Zealand. Over $1 trillion worth of real estate. Sold, I think, nearly 1 million properties through his real estate software. Scotty, he's represented Australia in world surfing titles. He's a retained firefighter, all-round Sawtell legend, Scotty Schindler. So thanks for joining us, Scotty. But can you just fill us in, business judo, where'd the concept come from? What's it all about?
Well, I got taught in the 90s. I hope everyone doesn't mind, I'm going to stand up. So I got taught in the 90s a term called mental judo. So I ran sales teams and I was a salesperson myself. I was on straight commission. And one of my mentors taught me a term called mental judo. And that was about, how to create win-win situations and how to help other people achieve what they wanted to achieve with their sales objectives and as a sales team. Well, if I could do that, well, then I'll achieve what I need to achieve as a sales manager. So he taught me this concept called mental judo. It was like, how do you win the game by helping other people win? And I thought, it made a lot of sense. And it took a while to get used to doing it. Even though I sort of naturally did it as a sales manager, you're helping other people achieve their goals. But that mindset took a while to achieve. And I did achieve it. I ended up being, as Courtney said, like one of the #1 managers in the Asia Pacific, which was pretty good. I wasn't necessarily the world's #1 salesperson, but as a manager, I could really manage teams with leadership and teaching and training and nurturing people how to become the best salesperson they could be. So as a team, collectively, we achieved so much. But when I decided to leave that business and start a company, I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to use mental judo. I'm going to use it in business. I'm going to use business judo. So that's how I come up with the term business judo. Now, for me, I thought everybody did it. I didn't think anything different. I just assumed everybody did it. In fact, Courtney, for years, I used to tell people to Google business judo to go and learn about it. And one day I did, and there's nothing on it. There's one guy that wrote an article in like 2003 or something, and that was it. So I thought I better trademark this, and I did. So, but business judo, so in other words, with business to business solutions, how do I create those same situations, those win-win? How do I help other people in business achieve what they want to achieve so I could do what I wanted to do in business? And that was the mindset. And I didn't know if I could achieve it or not. I had no idea. So I left the insurance business in March 2000. And in April 2000, there was a .com crash or a technology crash, for those of you that remember that. And I decided to leave the insurance business to go into IT and start getting into all this web thing, this whole internet thingy at the time. And next day there was this big crash and I've gone, oh, no way. It was pretty tough at the time. So it was tough mentally as well. So a bit of business judo is also about mental judo on yourself, having that strength and self-confidence in yourself, which takes time to be able to achieve that, if that makes any sense. So going back to how I started with business judo it was a very big mindset at the time to help other businesses achieve what they want to achieve so I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. So the first thing I started doing before Renet was I started getting into the IT world by building websites. So that's what I started doing, was websites. So I went to one of the local ISPs or internet service providers, like a mini Big Pond. So at the turn of the century, there was all these small ISPs around the world with little modems that connect up to the main internet framework, for want of a better way of saying it. So I went to this local ISP and said, look, if I give you all the websites to host that I designed, will you give me free website hosting? So a win-win. And he took a bit of a risk because I might have never got him any clients, but he still gave me free website hosting. And I did drive lots of business to him. So I got what I wanted, which was free website hosting and somewhere to create this environment because I didn't have any money at the time. So I created this win-win situation with this ISP that I got free website hosting, but he got all the clients, every single client. One of the requirements was they had to host on our servers, which was actually not mine. It was someone I had this collaboration with. And that was a very deliberate action of business judo. Was, well, how do I help this ISP grow his business so I can get what I want out of my business? So nowadays it's a buzzword called collaboration, okay, which is great. So one of the objectives of today is to not only tell you about some of the stories of what I did with these sort of new terms like collaboration. One of the objectives today is to help people understand that we all know we need to do it, but if you're already doing it, it's great. And if you're not doing it, you need to start doing it. But either way, the mindset that it is the right thing to do in business. You can achieve so much more if you help other people achieve what they want to achieve in their businesses. And that's how good business works. It's not a requirement. You can go on your own. There's plenty of people doing their own thing and not collaborating with anybody. And that's okay. But I believe business judo works. It's just a much easier way to get your mindset right. And if you help enough other people win in your environment, that you're going to ride that and win as well. So over this journey of the next half hour, before we get into some of the questions, I'm going to give some of the stories and things like that about what I did for business judo and how I made it work. But that's how it came about. So to answer your question, Courtney, business judo came from a term that I got taught, which was called mental judo, and helping my sales teams in the 90s achieve their goals so I could achieve my goals. So when I taught them how to be better salespeople, I was doing it so they could achieve what they wanted to achieve, so I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. And then business judo was a very deliberate action, which stayed with me. In fact, it still is here today with the successor. A very deliberate action about how I help other people win so I can achieve what I want to achieve in business. So that's where it came from.
How important, in business, it's really important to have, your business skills. It's a good work ethic, but how important is it to have a good mindset? How do you maintain a good mindset?
Yeah, well, maintaining a good mindset is hard because business is not easy. Look, even in the good times, business isn't easy. Sometimes things go wrong in the good times. And right now, today, things aren't as easy as they should be. But if we look at even our local environment down here in Sawtell, where we are now, let's go with the business of thirds for a second. A third of the cafes and restaurants have just shut shop. They've just gone. I'm not sure if they're going to come back or what they're doing. Maybe they're having a deliberate holiday. I'm not sure. But a third of people in the middle are coming and going, and there's a third of the people going, no, I'm going to push through this. They're doing their takeaways. They're doing the home deliveries. They're collaborating with each other. They're cross-marketing. And they're really getting in together and going, well, let's get through this together. Does that make sense? And I'm not saying which one's right or wrong. And I'll explain that as I go. But the point is that mindset, you can certainly see some of the mindset from some of the people in the market today are going, well, what do we need to do? What is there that I can do now to not just survive, but pivot and position myself for this next chapter, the chapter we're in, as well as the chapter next. One of the most important things to do with mindset right now is, I guess, is terminology. You ask some people how they're going and they say surviving. And that might have been a fun term, so you didn't brag about anything 6 months ago. But really what most people are doing now, the smart people, they're not surviving. What they're doing now is they're positioning. What they're doing right now is they're getting ready. What they're doing right now is they're investing in knowledge or IP for the next chapter. Do you see the difference? And that's mental judo. That's business judo on yourself to get your own mindset right. So is it important? Yeah. I mean, you think about a sports person, if you went onto the football field or you went out to the surfing, professional surfing arena, or you went to anything else, or you went to see a rock band and they just turned up and just, didn't really care, didn't have that mindset today to give the best performance possible. Well, what do you think it's going to be like? It's going to be terrible, right? They get what they're given instead of what they want. So that mindset is always important. So right now, our own mindset about focusing on what we want to do and what we can do to get what we want, well, it's critical. It's definitely critical. I had plenty of tough times in business, but I never wanted to go out of business. So I always had the mindset of whatever it takes. So some people have asked me before, did I ever want to quit? Well, the answer was no. I never, ever wanted to quit. So if I had ever wanted to quit, maybe I would have, because I had some pretty tough times. So to give you an example of business judo and what I did with the company to turn around from one of the toughest times I had, was even in the good times, I got to the point with the company at Renet, and it was 2005, where I had no money in the bank. I had people owe me money, but I had no money in the bank. I had $1,700, which didn't cover anything to do with the payroll that week. And, which wasn't a nasty situation, but still a situation. On Monday morning, I woke up and thought, well, if I get to Friday like I am now, I can't afford to pay anyone's wages. So I've gone, instead of going, oh, well, this is too hard or it's too difficult or blaming staff, I took full responsibility of that on my own mental judo to go, well, what do I need to do to change this situation for the better? How do I turn adversity into a benefit? What's the seed of advantage here? So what I did was I sat down for the day So I broke away. I didn't go to work in the morning. I just broke away and sat down and started going, well, what do I do? And what I introduced that day was a bonus system for all the staff. So essentially, Courtney, everyone got and I'm not sure you can even do this legally today, but back then we had workplace agreements. It was a little bit easier. But I essentially went to work, gave everyone a pay cut, but a pay rise at the same time. So what I did was I worked out everyone's activities they'd done in the last 6 months. If they did those same activities, they got a pay rise. But right now, I'm going to pay you less on your weekly wages. But if you continue doing what you're doing, you're actually going to get a pay rise. So I created a bonus system. And that bonus system completely changed the company from then on in. It completely changed the company. That was how I was able to let people be the best people they can, allow them to work and go the extra mile if they wanted to, because they all got incentives for it all of a sudden. Everyone was on salaries before that. Post that day, everyone was on benefits. Everyone could go the extra mile and get rewarded accordingly, just as if they had their own business within the business, a bit like running the sales teams again. So not only was that diversity or bad time really tough on me, because I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm a failure in business. Maybe I'm no good at this thing. Maybe I can't make it work. Well, I turned that all around to know what do I need to do that's going to make it better for my team and that mindset, my staff, so I could grow the company. So I never ever wanted to quit, if that makes any sense. And were there tough times? There was plenty of them. But that's where you go back to that mindset. And that was a pivot. And that was in good times. That wasn't even in tough times. I had no money when the times were good. And that's what happens in business sometimes. So, you know, it helps you prepare for the rainy day and do all those sorts of things. But that's one example there that you talk about with mindset and not wanting to quit and sticking it out and trying to turn negatives or disadvantages into advantages. The second thing with mindset was I always had the long-term game, if that makes any sense. I was never in it for the short gain. I was always in the business for the long game. I was always in the business for the long run, which I won't get into the story of how the company started because that's for another day. But, you know, that mindset as well was everything I did was to position myself for the long game mindset.
Yeah, is it important to understand when it is a good time to bunker down? And you know, and if you are bunkering down, what should you be doing? Should you be sitting back watching Netflix, or is there?
Well, maybe this is the time to bunker down and actually do nothing and just chill out and relax. Maybe this is you've worked hard for 4 or 5 years. You can afford to have 3 or 4 months off, or whatever it is right now, and bunker down. Spend time with your family, where it matters the most. If that makes any sense, maybe now is the time to bunker down. As long as you're bunkering down for the right reasons, well, go for it. But if you're bunkering down to suck your thumb, I'm not going to suggest it's a good idea. I'm going to suggest right now is a chance to bunker down mentally, physically, emotionally, and all those sorts of things to get yourself ready. So every year what I do, Courtney, was I'd always break away and go away for 2 weeks and sit down and bunker down on my own, away from the business, away from all the distractions of clients and everything else. And I did it with family. And sit down and mud map where we were and where I wanted to be next year, where I think the business would be in 3 years' time if we keep going on the trajectory we were on. So I would bunker down all the time. So this whole terminology that you just brought up with bunker down, I think is a great idea, but I used to do it all the time. So people right now actually have been forced now to step back and bunker down in a sense from their business and look at it. So when I said that a third of the businesses down the street right now aren't opening, well, maybe they're just bunkering down and getting ready. Maybe they can afford to go through that chapter and they're setting themselves up and looking at their menus because they're in the hospitality industry and they're all shut. So they're all going, well, maybe some of them are actually repositioning themselves. Some might even rebirth as a different style restaurant altogether. They go from Mexican to Italian. I don't know. Maybe they're repositioning. We don't know what's really happening behind the scenes. But this bunkering down thing is something I recommend. I used to do it all the time. I religiously broke away and sat down and mud mapped with a book of where we were, where we were going, both in salaries, staff, product, clients. I did all those things and had a look at that trajectory. But you can only do that if you bunker down. If you stop, sit back and look at what's happening, and now's a good time to do it. The other thing with bunkering down, sometimes you've got to bunker down to increase your IP. You know, your intellectual property. What's your IP? What's your business models? What's your business systems? What are all those things? And in the day-to-day grind of business, we don't often get to stop, sit back and look at what systems we have in place for product, for finances. What are the systems you have in place? So bunkering down right now could also be a positive that you are actually pivoting on some of your systems, especially financial systems. A lot of people are just busy on a day-to-day basis that they haven't actually got all that in tune. One of the best things I ever did was wrote my own financial accounting package. I know I could have ended up with a zero, but I didn't think of it like that. I was too busy looking after just my clients. I had a fully integrated financial system between how we processed to how people got billed. So I was very lucky. I understood systems and I made sure I had those systems in place. So as people go forward now, you've got the chance to bunker down and look at some of these systems. So your business in 2021, 2022, 2023 is way smarter than the business you had in 2010, 2015, 2019. So, and that's my goal right now, is to help people work smarter rather than harder as we go through this chapter. And that's mindset, that's business judo. Self-mental judo, business judo.
Collaboration. We've spoken a lot about collaboration and, business judo and collaboration. It's changed for a lot of people at the moment, how people are collaborating. We can only go outside with, one other person. Have you got some examples of, how you guys are collaborating at the moment, or how you are with people you work with?
Yeah, perfect. I mean, this is collaboration right now. I'm doing another one tomorrow morning with an international type audience from America and things like that. We're doing another one with a guy in Perth next week. So this is a form of collaboration. It's a form of win-win. And that's the most important part of collaboration. It's not all about me. It's not all about you, Courtney. It's all about helping someone else achieve their goals is part of the collaboration. So you can achieve your goals. So obviously it's got to be a win-win-win, or else there's no deal. So not everybody's open to that sort of thing too. So what are the formula for collaboration? Well, essentially the formula for collaboration, the best formula is to think about win-win-win. And if it's a win for everybody, the collaboration will work. And you've got to have that mindset of, you've got to speculate to accumulate. You've got to have a mindset of what you give comes back tenfold, but not necessarily from the same people. You can be give to a certain area, and all of a sudden something out of the left field comes in, and all of a sudden you've got this win. You go, where'd that come from? So what you give comes back tenfold. That's part of that mental judo, that mental mindset that you need to have. But collaboration, everyone needs to know what they can do in their own collaboration space. But to give you an idea, what time is it now, Courtney?
Yeah. 10 to.
To give you an idea of business judo and how I used adversity and some of the things that went wrong, do you mind if I talk about that for a second?
Go if you like.
It's easy to talk about the things that went right. Yep. There was lots of them. But let me give you an example of the longest journey I went on with a sale, in a sale, and how many times I iterated that with business judo and mindset. So in other words, collaboration, I used, when things went wrong, to positives, I did all this sort of stuff. So in 2003, I went to a company called IPMG in Sydney, who started a website called Homehound. They started that website. They asked me to come down and talk to them about some of the solutions of what I was doing. And that was out of a lead or a referral. And in 2003, it was July. I was actually in Townsville. So I flew from Townsville to Sydney, which is like a 4-hour flight. And I'm down there having the meetings and stuff like that. And nothing came out of that meeting. Anyway, a year later, they rang me up, not to the day, but a year later, they rang me up and said, look, we need to get this solution in place. It was called XML at the time. And we need to get XML put in place. Can you come down tomorrow? We've had a quote from someone else. Can you come down tomorrow and tell us what you can offer? And I've gone, bingo. I've got all this XML solution. I've done it. We're working. We're up and running. This is going to be an easy sale. And I thought, you know what? At the time, I'd spent about $5,000 in investing in this technology to get this XML up and running. So I thought, I'm going to charge these guys $5,000. I'll get my money back. Business is beautiful. And I've gone, oh no, they're Sydney people. So they're Sydney people. I can't charge 5. So I doubled it. Anyway, I thought, no, I'll go down and charge 10. I can always come back to 5. And I'm on the plane flying to Sydney. I went, oh, I can't do 10. It's too cheap. I'll make it 20. I doubled it again. This is a true story. So I've gone down to Sydney and I've got my $20,000 in my head. The product all works. The evidence, the proof, everything is there, right? Nothing for them to do except give me $20,000 and I'll implement the systems on their servers and everything else. Perfect business opportunity. I get down there and seriously, I'm down there and I had this couple of pages of what we did, like your little notes here, right? Because I remember I only had overnight. So, and we already had it up. There was no development for me. But anyway, I turn up and dead set, the guy on the other side, his name was Eddie. I can't remember his last name, so I'm going to say Eddie. And he sits there and we're talking away. I'm explaining my little couple of pages of quote that he asked me to do and what we were doing and stuff like that. And he pulls out this other document. He said, Scotty, look, here's the other quote. And it was a document like 100 pages deep. And he said, I just don't think you understand the scope. Like this is the other quote we've had, and it's $100,000 worth of work. So I just don't think you understand. In other words, I didn't get the gig. Not only was I miles too cheap, and I doubled it and doubled it again, I was miles too cheap. But I already had what I had running. I already had that solution in place. This other company had given this document about how they were going to create this product. So obviously mine didn't need to be as big to start with. But, you know, as far as that goes, what did I do though? All right, so I lose this deal, possibly $100,000 or $20,000. Either way, I lost all of it. So I didn't do anything right. I didn't get negative. I didn't get nasty. I didn't do anything. Because what I looked at that was, well, hang on a second. If they get this XML in place, they're going to need another solution over here for their real estate agents. So I turned that into a $4,000 a month gig for over 4 years. So they needed a solution for their real estate agents. So I simply went to them with that next and turned that into a positive because I knew what their weaknesses were by the way they were describing it. So that's how I turned losing one job into another job that lasted for years. Anyway, 4 years later, they decided, so this is talking long game now. They decided they were going to do their own agent solution, and they told me they weren't paying the $4,000 a month anymore, and it was all good. And I said, well, what do I do now? All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to support this company anyway. They've been good to me to start with. So there's no reason for me to get nasty. I'm going to continue to support this company for the next whatever it is, because it's good for my agents anyway to get their listings on this hometown website for free. So it's good for me, it's good for them, it's good for the agents. It's all win-win. There's just no more money. It was all freebie, right? There's no money at all changing hands. So anyway, so we do that for years and years and years. Anyway, it gets to 2014 when I decide to grow the business and see if I can find someone who wants to take over the business so we could grow this business more aggressively, Renet. I never wanted to sell and retire. I wanted to sell and get more aggressive and grow the business. Long story short, that didn't work. But nonetheless, guess who the company was that bought Renet?
The Hounds?
That company. So that company, from where I lost the first job to where I turned it into an agent software solution for them, to getting nothing except supporting them, doing it all for free, doing nothing but supporting them, turned around and actually bought the company. So that was a 12-year sale and a 12-year long game of pivoting, leveraging, win-win, collaboration, all those things. So when you talk about mindset, you go back a bit. You know, some people think, you know, what they achieve this month is all they're ever going to achieve, and they don't have the long game. You've got to have the long game, okay? And I can give other stories like that, but we're going to run out of time. But I always played the long game and always continued to pivot. Now, some of that was proactive and some of that was reactive, but always proactive or reactive with what I needed to do to achieve the goals. Now, nothing's going to ever go perfect. Does that make sense? I would have loved to have gotten whatever that figure was off them to develop the XML. I would have loved to have kept the $4,000 or $5,000 a month coming in to continue on with the agent solutions. I would have loved all that. And did it hurt the business? Sure, it would have been good for the business if it had stayed or I had got it. But it's just the way it is. So I can get really negative. So one of my messages from today is one of the most important things to do in this mindset right now is the clients you had in the business you had 6 months ago, whatever that looked like, whether you were starting or you were established, that business you had 6 months ago, one of the most important things you could do right now through this chapter is make sure they're still clients with you in 2021. They're still part of your business and they're still there. So your business, Judo, and your mindset right now is, well, how do you help your clients or your suppliers or whoever else is around you, you know, staff, how do you help everyone through this journey so that way you can still have a business next year and you can still continue to grow and prosper? Right now is when you really show your true identity and your true character of who you are. Does that make sense? You're actually now displaying that. And so that's the most important message from today is that mindset. You're going to do all these things. Like if we use Judo as a real example, I turn up for the Olympics, I'm getting ready for Judo, here's Scotty, and the other guy comes out and he's this big, right? He's the big juggernaut, David Goliath type Judo fight. I still have to try and win that fight, even if I think it's not winnable. And I have to try and use that person's strengths so I can win a fight. The good news in business though, regardless of all these David Goliath type things that happen, we can leverage, we can collaborate, we can come up with win-win situations. We can do all the things that we need to do to achieve our goals. Is it easy? No. And if you've got a white belt in this stuff, you're just starting out, well, great. Know that it's something that you do need to do. Know that it's something that does work. especially long-term. You know, short-term, maybe not. Sometimes they're seeds, like farmers. They plant a crop this year for next. Sometimes you're just planting. And sometimes it doesn't even come back. I can tell you about all the ones that didn't work too, by the way. But I can tell you about the ones that did work. And I won way more than I lost. Did I win all the time? Shit, no. I mean, even at the turn of the century when I started the company, Renet was my 6th startup company, well, startup attempt. So I pivoted, the 6th one worked. So I had to continue to pivot, continue to pivot, continue to pivot until one of them worked. And that took me 2 years of no money, no income, no anything. And did I want to quit in the middle of that? Yeah, I did. I actually did want to quit in the middle of that one. But once Renet got up and running, I never wanted to quit. So does that help answer some of that long game, some of that how business judo works as a mindset and how you're always thinking about business in that way rather than being selfish? It's not just, you know, good business is helping clients with products and services and solutions or solving a problem. I get that, but it's a much deeper way of looking at business in that mindset.
We're talking about pricing the other day in terms of, you know, some people feel bad in, you know, pricing things at the moment with, you know, being seen to be taking advantage of the situation.
Putting them up and...
Yeah, or how to price. You know, some people feel like they probably should be providing free services with all that's happening.
Well, they don't have to provide free. No, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, if you can and you want to give back, by all means do that. I mean, I am, but I'm just saying I can. But not everyone can do that. You know, like if you're with a local Toyota deal, it's not like you're going to start giving away free cars, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. Some people can't give anything back of value. It's just not physically possible. But if you are in a position to give back, well, you can. Like the coffee shop's not going to start giving away free coffee. And it's the last thing they're going to do. But at the end of the day, there are some businesses that can give or give value add. And even just if it's in the point of service, like some people are going, okay, well, look, we're going to do home delivery and it's not going to cost you anything. You know, so they're value adding that way to keep that client loyalty and keep that business going and keeping it. And that's part of mindset about what can I do to turn this into advantages. But not everybody can give. That's not necessarily the case. And
I think I think consumers, where they can, they're willing to support, you know, those businesses they've supported in the past too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like we use this hand sanitizer the other day. Because of all this, shop locally, I went down the street to the local not the health food shop there, like a chemist or you know, it was $150 a litre, but I bought local. You know, so I bought 2 of these at $25 each, which is this, you know, locally made hand sanitizer. So I'm going to try and support locals wherever I can. That's a fact. And other people are pivoting, even on the paper yesterday. I'm not sure if everyone can see that, but, you know, hotels turned to shopping. I heard this morning on the radio that McDonald's is now selling milk and bread in their drive-through. Well, why not? They're offering a service. If people don't want it, they won't buy it. But if they want milk and bread, they can buy milk and bread while they're there. Pretty simple. You know, almost a form of Trojan horse for those who are watching the video. What about when business judo goes wrong? Well, I'll give an example here. In 2010, I had 3 clients that were driving me nuts. They were completely consuming all my time. It was like a lose-lose-lose situation. What they wanted from me, their expectations were way off the radar. Now, one of them I probably wouldn't have noticed, but I had 3 of them all at the same time. And I thought, I've got to get rid of all 3 of these clients. And I need to do it gracefully, I need to do it nicely, and just let them go. So one was an eco real estate portal they were trying to create from Melbourne. And this journey started in 2008, 2009. It was 2010 where I went, no, this isn't working anymore. Anyway, I just had a conversation with her. She was all nice about it. And I don't know what happened to her. She just died away. Another one was a local guy that was doing private real estate online. Okay. And his expectations were way off at the fairies. Anyway, that one got a little bit ugly. I was actually going to give him his money back because that journey was only over a few months. And I was just going to say, look, here's your money back. Your expectations are here. The realities are here. I'm just going to give you your money back. That one got a bit ugly and off it went without getting into details. The third one was an online auction website, which would be perfect today. It was just too premature. It was a great product, but it was just really too premature for the marketplace. And this one went live in 2008. And in 2010, I just went, look, yeah, I'm a full-time person now for them and they're paying like next to nothing for it. So I had to let them go, but I helped them employ a person for themselves. I helped them take the technology and software and let them go. So what's the long story of that? So business judo was let them go, right? let's say there was 10,000 real estate agents in Australia, very small market, okay, I couldn't burn anyone in the marketplace. And I never chased any of the debts they owed me. I just let them go. I just needed to get them off so I could continue growing my business the way I wanted to grow my business. But you know what happened was the one that was the online auction site, this, and Michael Davern knows this story. He rang me one day out of the blue and says, listen, Scotty, I know we owe you some money. Will you take $4,000 as a settlement? I went, what? Really? Sure. I'll take $4,000 because I never chase bad debt. I've never chased bad debt. You know, if that was bad debt because of my fault, not theirs, I always call it my fault, bad debt, not theirs. So anyway, I took his $4,000, said, thank you very much. And I walked back in the office and just said to everyone, you'll never guess what just happened. Michael Davern rang me up and offered to pay $4,000 for his bad debt. And everyone went, wow, really? Because, you know, obviously everyone knew what time it was consuming, that I had to let them go. Everyone in the office knew the story. So anyway, that was the end of that. But you know what happened a year later? He rang me up. He said, hey, Scotty, I need to have a talk with you. I said, okay. So I drive to Brisbane, all right, because always business, I always drive and see people. You know, the amount of times that didn't work out, sure. But I drove to Brisbane. In fact, in the end, I drove to Brisbane probably a dozen times and had dinner with Michael Davern, sat down, had the wines with him, talked conversation. Turns out what he was doing was he was buying a franchise in Australia called Remax. Now, because of our relationship, the fact it didn't work, I think it was just too premature. But the way we exited, the way he came back, you know, so his business, Judo, was paying me some money. He probably paid a few people some money out of his own pocket to keep his reputation intact. And I didn't argue with it. I just took his $4,000, said, yeah, no worries, thank you. I actually had to go back in the office, create a new invoice to invoice him for $4,000. I'd already written off the debt. And he probably did that with everyone. But anyway, so I'm having this conversation. I'm remembering this guy that was really genuine and was true to his word and just my kind of guy, a handshake kind of guy. So anyway, in the end, we saved Remax from their IT company. We saved them some money. We transitioned them. And that turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year worth of revenue at Renet. But what happened was business Judo in 2010 was it was going wrong. So how do I gracefully get out of that, retain my reputation, retain the business and continue going forward? I had no idea that 2 years later, I would be back in business with one of them way better than what I had for the previous 2 years before that. Had no idea. Talk about long game. But that was when business Judo went bad. We were doing this win-win. They were collaborating with me to come up with a solution for those three people. And they weren't the only ones I did it with. But in that year, I had three of them that I just had to say, look, this isn't working. So we're collaborating. It was turning into a lose-lose-lose. So business Judo can go wrong. It does go wrong. So you've got to have, you know, an exit strategy and learn when to recognize it. And then if you can't turn it into a win-win, well, then you have to get out of some of these situations. You have to, you know, what do they call it in fighting? Tap out. You have to tap out, right? You say, look, this isn't working. Look, thanks just the same. And we go our own ways, but try to do it gracefully and never, ever burn your bridges, ever. You know, I'm sure there's some people in the end, maybe the lady from the Eco site to my face didn't say, maybe she ran around saying, oh, Scott's horrible because it never worked out. I've got no idea, but I never had that intention. And the evidence of that is the amount of people that kept coming back to Renet. They'd leave for something shining on the side and then they'd come back to Renet because I tried never to ever burn any bridges. Part of the business Judo was, I'm happy for them to come back. Go off and try something else if you want to. I'm still going to be here. I'm here for the long game. And that's part of that mindset, business Judo, leverage, win-win. So it does go wrong from time to time and expect that. Probably business a third of the time it's not going to work and a third of the time it is. So if you're going to do, you know, 10 collaborations in the next year, a third of them are going to work out really well. And a third of them won't for whatever reason. Timing doesn't matter. So it's just the way it is. And the other third in the middle, depending on what happens. But that's when business Judo goes wrong, and it can. And I can give you some ugly stories and how I turn those into positives. But that's a nice general one for you to know that it's not a perfect world, business Judo. Every now and then you lose the fight.
We might jump into a couple of questions, but how do you tackle the concept of marketing non-essential services in terms of, you know, obviously people are tightening their belts at the moment?
Yeah, well, marketing. So let's go into one of the cool things that you can do right now with marketing is, from memory, I think you've got a really good social media account on Instagram. Is obviously continue to promote what you're doing. So in other words, the clients you had 6 months ago, the people that knew, liked and trust you 6 months ago, you want them to come back in 6 months' time. You want them when they've got a little bit of excess money to actually come back and do the courses or the services or put their kids in or enjoy it themselves. So it's about positioning yourself throughout this and continue on your marketing. But you might not have, knowing full well that you may not be running any of these sort of things for the next 3-4 months. You're not going to get groups of people in. You're not going to be doing the courses. So, but it doesn't mean you still can't keep people at front of mind and be talking about some of the things you have done over the last year, some of the things you're planning on doing next year. You know, one of the really cool things I'm seeing happen right now with marketing and leveraging is using the third person. So, you know, using your clients as examples or the people who have done your courses to share good news stories. Does that make sense? So use the third person in your marketing and share the good news stories. That's a form of business judo right now. Is your mindset is, well, look, I'm still in business. We just have to hibernate now because mine's a group get together where we get together and do the, what's it called again? Not macrame, what you do again?
Macrame workshop.
Oh, it is macrame.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought I had it wrong.
Macrame.
Macrame. So she gets together with people, and physically that's not possible for a few months. Same as if you're a gym at the moment. So you have to work out ways of doing it. And that could be going to online courses or sharing some online things and creating that community still around your brand and your customers so they're still clients in 6 months' time. And once again, that's mindset. What else was it?
So what we got, Mike just asked, how long did it take to pull your 1357 system together?
Good question. Yeah, look, 1357 I had before I started Renet. I had before I left the insurance business, and I didn't know it. And what happened was when I exited and retired, people started asking me about all these things, and I started talking about, you know, let's say the 5 business philosophies: business judo, time duplication, business of thirds, rule of 100, and sugar and cream. And I started talking about these things, and then one day I was talking to a friend of mine about, back in the 90s, we had this 1357 plan, and I didn't think anything of it. We had a conversation about a heap of things. And then I realized what I didn't have was a way of packaging up everything that I did over the 20-year journey. You know, from before I started Renet to the journey of Renet to exiting. I didn't have a way of packaging it up. And I was riding the bike one day and then realized, hang on, I actually had a 1357. So I had healthy, wealthy, and wise as the 3. The 7 was the 7 days a week and the time management and what I did there. And the 1 was all about me, wrapped around a triangle. So I was riding my bike one day and realized I had that, and I had an epiphany. You know, because I came in and said, Courtney, I don't think I used the words epiphany. I think I said, I think I got it. And that's how I come up with the system 1357. It's really all the things I did, but I now have a way of packaging it up that people can go and learn bits and pieces of what I did on that journey and use those to their advantage to whatever it is on their journey, so they can achieve their goals too. So that's how I come up with system 1357. It was originally called a 1357 plan, but to be honest, I wasn't that good at planning. I was really good at mud mapping. I'd write out notes and I'd do, and I guess it was like a plan, but you couldn't have shown it to anyone. I would have failed an MBA for sure, because it was all mud maps and just drafting financial budgets and stuff and where I'd be and staff, if I did this and if I did that, hired more people. It was always mud mapping. But the one thing I did, and the one thing I religiously did to start the company and continue the company, was put systems in place. And I learned that from McDonald's. McDonald's had a system as a kid. They had a system for the person cooking meat. They had a system for the person delivering. They had a system for everything in their business. When I worked for the American Insurance Company, guess what they had? They had systems of training. They had systems of presentation. They had systems for everything. So the one thing I made sure I did when I started my own company was put in systems, because that's the one thing I could rely upon. So that's why I came up with system 1357. And it's full of business philosophies, techniques. It's not just do 1, 3, 5, and 7. It's not this procedure like cook a hamburger and that's what you get is a hamburger. No, it's ways and techniques and philosophies that you can implement in your business that I know work. They all work for me. And they could work for a mechanic, a builder, a solicitor, an accountant, a coach, any business at all that wants to grow their business, it'll work for.
So Cheryl has asked, where was yours, Cheryl? Cheryl's asked, when this current challenge is over, where do you see the growth areas?
What comes after a downturn is an upturn. You know, what comes after an upturn is a downturn. Not that any of us expected what we have right now. So if you want to know where the growth opportunities are next, well, anything at the moment that's struggling is what people are going to want to thrive on in the next year or two. Look, I'm not into hospitality, so I can't advise anyone about hospitality. But at the end of the day, I can tell you what's going to happen if this thing's overcome and we've got solutions for everything at Christmas this year. Mate, we're all going to be social juggernauts. We're all going to want to go out and actually start meeting some people again. We're going to be at bars and cafes like we never were. You know, it's just going to be straight back to that sort of thing. So is there an opportunity of that? Probably. What that opportunity is, I don't know, it was like every second week another cafe would turn up just the same as the other one down the road. So people need to now think about what their fish attracting device is for going forward in that area if they're going to get into hospitality. And all the weddings are off at the moment. But all of a sudden there's going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday weddings because all the people from this year didn't get married. There's going to be twice as many wanting to do it next year. I mean, it's about positioning for that sort of thing. So like I said, if you're a wedding organizer right now, you're screaming, you're going, this is terrible. But everyone's just holding off. So it's now getting ready to position yourself for this growth. And once again, you come back down to that marketing question that came up a minute ago. Well, now's the time to share all the weddings you've done over the last 2 years or 3 years and all the good news stories and leverage off that third person about what you do and the quality you bring to this experience for when they're ready. So looking at those opportunities, your space. Everyone knows their own space. So an exact example of how to pivot and how to get ready, well, that's up to you to look at your own space and your own opportunities to work out how you can leverage. Once again, that comes back down to mindset. Everyone got into business for only one reason, which was to win in business. If you didn't get into business to win, you got into business for a hobby. And that's okay, you can have a hobby. But most people get into business for only one reason, is to create a lifestyle and create some success. So it's up to you to look at that business opportunity, that arena that you're in, whether you're in the car industry, the health industry, the hospitality industry, the tourism, it doesn't matter. Up to you now to look at your industry and work out what you're going to do next to take advantage of this situation when it unfolds for the positive. And it will. We just don't know how yet, but it's all going to change. It's all going to, as it always has, come back again. So I started my company, Renet, by the way, just so you know. So at turn of the century, we had the Y2K bug. We thought all the planes were going to crash and all the computers were going to crash around the world. So everything stopped at the end of 99 because everyone just freaked out. Turns out that was nothing. That's okay. But then we had the dot-com crash the month after I left my insurance business job to go and start up an IT company. We then had GST get introduced in Australia. So no one wanted to spend any money because no one knew what they were going to do. So then for the next 6 months, everyone was working out how to do BASs and stuff. So once again, no one else was spending money. Followed on to that in 2001, we ended up with SARS and the World Trade Center with the terrorism. So all of a sudden, global economies just went whoop. But by 2002, there was new terms like sea change, tree change, and the market just turned around and went nuts. So, anyone that owned a caravan industry, anything in the caravan industry at the time of 2003 couldn't keep up with demand because everyone started going around Australia and started going camping and doing those things. They didn't want to go to overseas. And that's what's going to happen straight after this. The next phase of this is the first thing, people are going to start traveling again. People want to get out of the cities, they want to get out of home, they want to go camping, and it's about positioning for that. And how you fit into that, well, that's up to you to work it out.
Yeah, I had a conversation with some guys who were linked in with some angel investors in Melbourne the other day, and they were talking about how those guys are ready to invest, once this storm has passed. And, unfortunately, we will lose businesses. But I think that's part of the reason it's important for people to push through is that they can get through to the other side. There might be a little bit less competition there. And I think there'll be people, that are saying that they are willing to invest when the time comes. We just had a question there around some good examples. Have you got some good examples of things maybe that are happening at the moment, in terms of the whole business judo philosophy?
Yeah, well, it's happening everywhere. Like I said, hotels turning into shopping. There's a business judo. That's mindset. That's instead of shutting the doors, what else can I do? McDonald's, that's another example. The local business community here, a third of the businesses here decided to get together and pay one person to do the home delivery. So that's their collaboration. That's their mindset thing. Immediately, the first thing that happened was a lot of the gym instructors and a lot of the yoga instructors went straight to online videos. They just pivoted straight away. How they're selling that, I'm not sure. They might be giving it. They might be subscribing people. I'm not sure, but that's straight away mindset of business judo. That's how they're overcoming adversity. It's not necessarily how they're collaborating, but that's how they're doing that. But a few examples. I mean, it's everywhere if you look for it. When you hear and look for it, like I was looking at, I can't even pronounce it properly, Lufthansa Air, which is Swiss Air, or the Swiss airline company. They've changed from being a passenger plane company to flying to do cargo runs. So all their seats of their planes are full of medical equipment now. Not passengers, but medical equipment. And that's what they're doing to leverage and collaborate with, I guess, the government, probably in their case, is they're turning it into a cargo plane. Because right now, there's struggle to get demand of medical equipment. So they're flying their planes, still continuing to not fold up in business. So they're collaborating with whoever it is. I know maybe it's a government-owned company, but they're collaborating right now with the medical suppliers, the hospitals, whatever it is, to continue on doing the supply instead of just shutting down. And it's happening everywhere. So it's not hard to find it. You know, when you start to get the mindset yourself, you actually see it everywhere. Have you ever bought a red car, then all of a sudden you see all the red cars everywhere? You know, you buy a Subaru, all of a sudden you see all the other Subarus. It's exactly the same thing in business. You start to see all the other people doing all the smart things because you know what's smart in your space and you start going, well, they're being smart in their space. I like the way they think. So that's everywhere. Starts with you first, but then you see it everywhere. Well, on that note, if you've been in business for the last 10 years and you haven't been collaborating right now, you're going to struggle more than most. So if you hadn't had alliances and you hadn't had some win-win situations, you haven't had collaboration over the last 10 years, well, now's the time to start thinking about it properly. And a proper mindset like business judo. You're just on your white belt. You haven't got a black belt. But I can tell you the people that are on black belts of business judo right now, and they've been doing all these things for the last 10 years, are going to get through this next period way better than those that aren't. They're going to be better positioned, both not so much financially, but certainly mentally and in their business-wise. They're going to be positioned so much better as we move out of this chapter. But it's a good question. If you look online today or listen to the news today, you're going to hear at least 5 or 10 cases of people using business judo. And any of these things, leveraging, collaborating, whatever it is, you're going to hear it today. But the difference is not that they're doing it. The difference is when you learn to make it part of your mindset, when it becomes part of your DNA of business and you get that black belt because you've been doing it for a long time, that's the difference. It's not that you can't hear it or see it. You hear it and go, that's smart. But is it just they stumbled across it or they just do part of it, or is it really part of their DNA? And what I'm trying to encourage people to do is with business judo is to make it part of your DNA. Make it part of your everyday thinking. Like podcasts, for example. People are now starting podcasts. They never did podcasts before. You know, but people are now starting their own podcasts, which is awesome. And what's the business judo in that? Well, if I want to learn from someone, I interview someone on my podcast. So I share it with all my podcast listeners, which is at first is going to be a small audience, then you'll grow the audience. But I get to learn from someone and share with someone some knowledge that I want to learn. So if I wanted to become a marketing expert right now and I had a podcast, I'd get a marketing expert on to share his knowledge with my audience. But I get to ask that person in my podcast the questions I want to know. That's a form of business judo. It's mental, it's mindset, it's win-win. It's all those things.
If you, how do you think sort of 3-6 months ahead? I mean, I get the whole mental shift. How do you go about planning like the 6 months ahead or 3 months ahead if you're not,
Yeah, cool.
not quite in that frame of mind? I mean, happy to do it. I get the business judo idea.
What do you call it? The drainer basket.
Yeah.
You know,
all right, we'll just mute everyone again as I answer it. So, so Anthony, good question. I mean, lucky enough for me.
Yeah, use once and throw it in.
Lucky enough for me, Anthony, is that, can everyone still hear me? Yeah, good. Lucky enough for me, I always look long-term anyway. So when people ask, you know, how do I think 6 months ahead right now? Well, I know it's really difficult, but I always had the really big long-term look at everything. Even as a kid, I had that, and I don't know where it came from. Probably because I came from adversity with a single-parent family with 4 kids and things like that, and we had no money. So I started looking at what I wanted to look like as a 30-year-old when I was in my late teenage years. I thought, well, what do I want to look like as an older person? And one thing I didn't want to be was the same environment that I was in as a kid. I wanted to have a better lifestyle for my kids and things like that. So I always had that mindset. And then when I started working and started making some money, I then started looking at what I wanted to look like as a 40-year-old. And then I started looking, you know, what I want to look like as a 50-year-old. And now, you know, I'm now thinking about what I want to look like as a 60-year-old. How am I going to live in my 50s? Or at the time, how I was going to live in my 40s, or how I was going to live in my 30s. So I've always been that. And I've always expected things to go wrong and things not to go perfect. So when things haven't gone right, I just knew it was part of the process. But it is difficult right now if you've not been that kind of, not saying you personally, I'm just talking about in general, right? Because I know you do a lot of consulting. It's probably one of your biggest questions you're getting right now, Anthony, is, well, how do I deal with the next 6 months? And I guess I've always been able to overcome all the adversity because I've always had the long game. I've always been a long-term thinker. And one of the numbers on the 7 of the 1357 is the 10, and that's the 10-year plan. Where do you want to be in 10 years' time, and how are you going to achieve that, and how are you going to overcome all those things that go wrong? Also, how are you going to maximise on all the good times? So when the good times are there, you know, are you investing back and saving some money and putting money away for the rainy days? So I've always been able to do it. So right now, for the people that have never done that, it's really difficult to start thinking about 6 months. Well, you know, I ask a lot of people now, just even short-term goals, which now is really difficult. I get it because I can't even answer this one at the moment. But how do you want to start 2021? You know, not so much 6 months, but how do you want to position yourself right now for 2021? Now, I can't tell you what's going to happen. If we look at how they want to start 2020, 2020 started so amazing. There was so much positivity out there in the world. It was awesome. It was just positivity everywhere. But no one knew what was going to happen in 2020. But still, you can look at how do I want to start 2021. And right now, we actually know the environment right now. So we can still look at what are the things I need to do and how can I invest in my own IP or knowledge or product or whatever it is so I can start 2021 being the person I want to be in business. Now, I can't guarantee I've got the clients. I can't guarantee I've got the profits or the revenues, but I can make sure that I've got everything in line with my systems, with my products, my staff, my procedures, my finances for when things do pick up. So that's the number one thing. I mean, when the GFC hit the real estate industry in 2008 to 2010, the real estate industry in Australia shrunk by 10%. We lost over 1,000 offices, which was quite a lot. It was the only year I didn't actually have financial growth. I actually had a decline that same year because it was out of my control, right? The GFC had hit and everything was shrinking and there was no consumer confidence and all those sorts of things. But, you know, I couldn't guarantee that. But what I could work on was, well, how do I want to start next year? What are the products that we're going to develop? How am I going to look after the current clients I got the best I can so I can retain those people and those sorts of things. So it is difficult, Anthony, to look at 6 months down the line if you've never been a long-term thinker.
I think it's important too to have that balance between, you know, I was always a real long-term thinker, and then my partner and I started up a restaurant. I found out in restaurants, you've got to be in the moment, you know. Yeah. You got to have that long-term vision, but it's really important to be in the moment. You might have financial worries and all that kind of thing, but then when the restaurant door opens and you're there and you're the host, it's kind of, you've got to be in the moment.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And, you know, I know a lot of the people we're dealing with at the moment, to think 6 months in advance is almost too overwhelming. You know, it's kind of more so about, let's just think 8 to 12, you know, 2 to 3 months ahead. Let's get through the next 2 to 3 months, reassess.
Well, let me give a sporting example of this, Anthony. So let me reverse this completely. I've always been a long-term thinker, but I've always been a micro-action manager. So in other words, let's go to surfing in competing with surfing. And this is the same in all sport, right? So let me go back. And it's the same in business every day. But the way surfing works is you surf for 20 minutes. You go out, there's 4 surfers in the water. You get 20 minutes to go surfing. And in that 20 minutes, the best 2 waves you catch, add them together out of 10 points. So you might get, say, 15 out of 20, or you might get 8 points out of 20 over your 2 waves. And the 2 highest people that get scores get through the heat. So how do you manage that? You have to go through maybe 4 or 5 of these heats to win a competition. And that gets you to 1 layer. Then you go, like all kids sport, you know, you go your region, your state, your national layer to the world titles, for example. It happens with swimming, happens with everything. But all of a sudden, if you're at the beginning of that event, let's go to get to the world titles. If you're thinking world titles and you're at the round 1, you're miles off. You know, I talk long-term all the time, but you're miles off. How do you win a heat? Well, I can tell you how you win a heat. And this is how we win through today, right? So how I won through a heat was 1 turn at a time, was 1 wave at a time, it was 1 heat at a time. And that was it. That was the formula for winning surfing competitions. Now, I wanted to get all the way to the Australian titles. I wanted to get to the state titles. I wanted to win and qualify through the events. But how did I do that? That was my goal, but what were the action plans? Well, I can tell you, like I said, and how I taught the kids was it was 1 turn at a time, 1 wave at a time, 1 heat at a time. And that was the formula that I teach kids, and that's the formula I did myself. I could have started that 20 minutes with the worst start ever, but if I stick to that mindset, the next wave that comes in, make that next turn, make that next wave, and just continue on doing that. And that's how sometimes I won some of the heats in the last few minutes at the dying death. We all know state of origin. Queensland never said stop, right? They never said die Queensland won the State of Origin so many times in the last 10 minutes because of that same attitude. One play, one pass at a time. So I always think long-term, but Anthony, maybe that helps answer the question. The reality is the actions actually happen right here in this moment. And in the middle is all the other things. You know, but if I didn't have the mindset that I wanted to get to the Australian titles or I wanted to win the Australian titles, I wouldn't have kept that discipline during that heat to make sure that next wave I stayed determined on. And that's the same thing in business. So, you know, if you didn't care about your business, Courtney, you wouldn't have opened next Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Thursday night because there was a function going on, because you wouldn't have cared, but you cared. And that's the difference. You wanted to win. You wanted to grow the business. So that's the difference.